The lumina chamber of the Cathar ascendancy hummed with a silence more profound than any sound. It was a resonant quiet, born from the gravity of ages and the weight of decisions that could fracture worlds. Light, filtered through crystalline arches carved from the heart of a captured comet, refracted into 1,000 shifting spectra across the polished obsidian floor, illuminating the high council of the Galactic Empire. They were an assembly of ancient beings, each the sovereign of a star-spanning dominion, their forms as varied as the worlds they represented, yet their purpose was singular: to preserve the immutable order they had forged across the spiral arm. At the chamber's apex, suspended in a shimmering field of gravitic energy, sat the Overarchon, his body a symphony of intricate biomechanics and living crystal, his face a mask of serene, unyielding authority. For centuries, his word had been law, his wisdom the bedrock of their shared imperium. But now a tremor of uncertainty had breached the sanctum. It was a subtle thing, a dissonance in the cosmic harmony, a signal from a species that should have been nothing more than a footnote in the grand, sprawling archives of conquered and assimilated civilizations. They called themselves humanity, and they had sent a message, not a plea for entry, not a declaration of allegiance, but a warning. The debate had raged for cycles, a storm of whispered conspiracies and impassioned orations that echoed against the silent, watching crystal. Today, the storm was to break. Lord Xylo, a towering insectoid being whose carapace shimmered with the colors of a dying nebula, gestured with a bladed forelimb, his voice a series of sharp, percussive clicks translated by the chamber's omnipresent field into melodic, yet stern prose. The evidence remains irrefutable. This humanity has mastered technologies that defy our understanding of physics. Their energy signatures are paradoxical. They emanate from a single, unassuming star system, yet they possess the resonance of a civilization that has mastered the fabric of spacetime itself. They expand, yet they do not conquer. They build, yet they do not fortify their borders in a manner consistent with any known strategic doctrine. They are an anomaly, a variable unaccounted for in the great equation of our empire. His multifaceted eyes swept across the assembled lords, reflecting the shimmering light in 1,000 fractured images of concern. He represented the military faction, the arm of the empire that saw threats in every shadow, and in humanity, he saw a shadow that stretched across galaxies. From the opposite side of the chamber, a soft, ethereal chime announced the intention of matriarch Alithia to speak. She was a being of pure energy, contained within a sculpted vessel of woven light and force, her form shifting like smoke in a gentle breeze. Her voice was a chord of harmonious frequencies, a stark contrast to Xylo's rigid cadence. And what of their message, Lord Xylo? Have you considered its content or merely the power behind its transmission? It was not a threat. It was a caution, an offering of knowledge. They spoke of a fragility in the cosmic substrata, a phenomenon our deepest probes have only just begun to hint at. They offered to share their understanding, to open a dialogue about a mutual threat that transcends empires and borders. Is it not the height of arrogance to interpret an outstretched hand as a clenched fist? Her argument was one of diplomacy, of the potential for an alliance that could elevate the empire beyond its current plateau of technological and philosophical stagnation. For generations, the empire had expanded, absorbing lesser civilizations, its growth a relentless, predictable tide. But it had not evolved. Alithia felt this truth in the core of her being, a sense that their vastness was a form of inertia, not true strength. A third voice, dry and rasping like stone grinding on stone, cut through the chamber's delicate energy. It belonged to the archivist, a silicon-based lifeform whose body was a slow-moving mountain of crystalline data shards, his consciousness distributed across a network of ancient memory crystals. "The message is the danger," he intoned, his words resonating with the finality of recorded history. "Their warning implies knowledge we do not possess. To possess such knowledge, they must have either traversed timelines, communicated with entities beyond our dimensional understanding, or they have existed for eons, hidden from our sight. Each possibility is a threat to the established order. If they are ancient, they have watched us, judged us, and now seek to manipulate us. If they have communed with the transcendent, they are conduits for forces we cannot comprehend. Their very existence subverts the narrative of our supremacy. The Empire is the pinnacle of evolution in this galaxy. This is the foundational truth upon which our stability rests. To accept. Their warning is to accept that we are not the masters of our own destiny." The archivist's logic was cold, unassailable, and deeply rooted in the Empire's core ideology. It was a philosophy that had crushed rebellions and pacified entire species, the belief in their own ultimate and unquestionable significance. The Overarchon remained silent, his crystalline form pulsing with a slow, rhythmic light. He had listened to these arguments before. He had reviewed the data streams, the fragmented sensor readings, the single, pristine message from the humans. It had arrived without prelude, carried on a modulated gravitational wave that had passed through the Empire's most sophisticated sensor nets as if they were nothing more than mist. The transmission was a work of art, a perfect, seamless carrier of information that was orders of magnitude more efficient than anything the Empire's finest minds had ever conceived. Inside the message was not a demand or a threat, but a complex data packet. It contained astronomical charts of unparalleled accuracy, detailing subtle cosmic radiation fluctuations that imperial science was only just beginning to theorize. It contained models of quantum foam instability, complex and elegant, suggesting a deep, almost innate understanding of the universe's underlying structure. And it contained the warning, a calm, measured statement about an approaching wave of extragalactic energy, a null field that would not destroy, but would rewrite the fundamental laws of physics within the regions it touched, rendering all existing technology inert, all life based on familiar chemistry unsustainable. The message concluded with a simple, open invitation to discuss a collaborative solution. The sheer audacity of it was what unsettled the Council the most. A species from a single, unremarkable yellow star, a race that had only just begun to venture beyond their own planetary cradle, was claiming to understand the fate of the galaxy better than an empire that had ruled it for millennia. They had not bowed. They had not offered tribute. They had presented a cosmic problem and offered to work as equals on its solution. To the military mind of Lord Xylo, this was a display of incomprehensible arrogance, a veiled declaration of superiority. If their technology was so advanced, what else were they capable of? Their ships, when they were detected at all, were phantoms. They appeared on sensors for a microsecond, thousands of light years from their origin point, only to vanish again. They left no wake, no radiation, no temporal distortion. They were ghosts, and their silence was more terrifying than any war cry. Matriarch Alithia, however, saw something different. She saw a civilization that had transcended the primal urge for conquest. Why would a species with such power need to expand? Territory was a concept for those who needed resources. What if humanity had unlocked a source of energy so fundamental that the stars themselves were but trivial sparks in comparison? What if their expansion was not physical but intellectual, a journey into the fabric of reality itself? Their warning in this context was not an act of hubris, but an act of profound empathy, an act of a parent cautioning a child about a fire it does not understand. The thought was both humbling and, to many in the chamber, deeply offensive. The archivist, in his cold, calculating consciousness, processed only the threat to stability. The Empire was a delicate, intricate machine. Its countless systems and quadrillions of citizens were held in balance by a shared belief in their own strength and permanence. Humanity's message was a virus that threatened to corrupt that belief. If the Empire was not the ultimate power, if it could be rendered helpless by a cosmic wave it could not even perceive, then the very justification for its existence would crumble. Rebellions would ignite. Subjugated worlds would see a moment of weakness. The order of millennia would fracture into chaos. The risk was too great. The anomaly of humanity had to be contained, its message discredited, its power exposed as a lie or, if real, brought under imperial control. The Overarchon finally stirred, the light within his form brightening, casting long, sharp shadows from the assembled council members. His voice was not heard but felt, a direct telepathic projection into the minds of all present, a tide of pure reason and ancient authority. We have debated the meaning, but we have not addressed the core truth. This humanity is either a liar or it is a god. There is no middle ground. If they are liars, their deception is a direct challenge to our imperium, an act of aggression that must be met with overwhelming force. We will make an example of their system, a testament to the galaxy that none may question the might of the Empire. We will shatter their world and broadcast its dying screams on every frequency, a lesson in humility for any who would dare to follow their path. A cold wave of assent washed through the chamber, emanating most strongly from Lord Xylo and his faction. The simplicity of this path was seductive. It was the way of the Empire, the solution that had always worked. The Overarchon paused, letting the weight of his first proposition settle. Then his mental voice continued, softer now, but with an edge of something that felt like fear. But if they are not liars, if they speak the truth, then their power is beyond our measure. To accept their offer is to become their student, to place the fate of our civilization in the hands of an unknown variable. They would hold the key to our survival, and we would be rendered their dependence. The empire would cease to be an empire, becoming instead a protectorate, a client state to a power we cannot fathom. This, too, is an end to our way of life. He projected a star chart into the center of the chamber, a swirling hologram of the galaxy. A single system glowed with a soft blue light, Earth. Then, from the edge of the galactic map, a faint, almost invisible shimmer began to move inward. The null field. It was a representation of the data the humans had sent. It moved slowly, inexorably, like the tide coming in on a vast, cosmic shore. The choice before us is therefore not between peace and war, the overarchon concluded, his voice resonating with the finality of a death sentence. It is a choice between two forms of extinction, extinction of our bodies or extinction of our identity. The archivist is correct. The empire is its ideology. Without it, we are merely a collection of disparate species, a memory of greatness. I have weighed the cosmic scales, and I find the soul of our empire to be heavier than the flesh. The warning was a test, a challenge to our resolve. They sought to see if we would bow to fear. We will not. We will show them that our will is stronger than their truth. We will bring our fleets to their star. We will silence their message and erase the messenger. We choose war. It is the only way to remain who we are. Matriarch Alithia's light form flickered, a silent cry of protest lost in the overwhelming tide of agreement that filled the chamber. The logic was perverse, a self-destructive loop of pride and fear, but it was the logic of the Empire. It was the only logic they had ever known. Lord Xylo's bladed limbs clicked in satisfaction. The war fleets, the pride of the Ascendancy, had been on standby for cycles. They were instruments of annihilation, planet killers, starbreakers, their purpose not to conquer but to erase. To make examples, the order was given. The vast, silent machinery of the Imperial war machine began to turn, its shadow falling upon a small, distant blue world whose inhabitants had only sought to warn them of the coming darkness. They had offered a candle, and in response, the Empire had chosen to burn the galaxy down rather than accept its light. The human vessel that appeared at the designated coordinates was not what the Imperial Armada had expected. Lord Xylo stood on the command deck of the Indomitable Will. A vessel so vast its interior spaces had their own weather patterns. Before him, the main view screen showed a swirling vortex of hyperspatial distortion, the signature of a fleet tearing its way through the fabric of reality. His armada was a collection of behemoths, ships that were moons unto themselves, their hulls forged from neutron-degenerate matter, their weapons capable of cracking continents and igniting atmospheres. They were the physical embodiment of the Empire's power, a force that had not known a true challenge in 1,000 years. They had arrived at the edge of the human system, a bristling wall of absolute destruction, ready to deliver the overarchon's judgment. And then the human ship arrived. There was no flash, no distortion, no grand tearing of spacetime. One moment there was empty space. The next, the ship was simply there. It was small, impossibly small, a sleek, featureless craft of midnight black that seemed to drink the starlight around it. It was no larger than one of Xylo's escort frigates. It displayed no weapon ports, no energy shields, no visible means of propulsion. It simply hung in the void, a perfect, silent teardrop of impossible physics. Xylo's sensor technicians reported a cascade of contradictory readings. The ship had the mass of a large asteroid, yet it cast no gravitational shadow. It radiated no heat, yet its energy signature was equivalent to a stable singularity. It was a paradox made manifest, an object that could not exist according to the known laws of the universe. For a long moment, an eternity in the frozen tension of the command deck, nothing happened. The Imperial fleet, a swarm of world-ending monsters, held its position, their vast engines a silent, throbbing promise of violence. The single, tiny human ship remained motionless. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it sent a tremor of rage through Lord Xylo. For them to send such a pathetic vessel to face the might of the Ascendancy was the ultimate insult. It was a gesture of contempt so profound it bordered on madness. Then a communication request opened, not on the military frequencies, but on the universal diplomatic channel, an antiquated protocol reserved for first contact with pre-warp civilizations. The request was clean, unencrypted, and broadcast with a clarity that cut through the background radiation of space like a scalpel. Xylo, his mandibles tight with fury, ordered the connection to be established. He would hear their pleas before he gave the order to obliterate them. The image that formed on the screen was not of a bridge or a command center, but of a simple room. It was furnished with what appeared to be organic materials, wood and fabric, and was lit by a soft, warm light. In the center of the room sat a single human. It was a female of the species, clad in a simple gray tunic. She had no visible cybernetics, no rank insignia, no honorific guards. Her face was calm, her expression serene, almost meditative. Behind her, a circular window looked out not upon the stars, but upon a tranquil scene of rolling green hills and a blue sky, a live image from their distant, condemned world. "This is Emissary Kalen of Earth," she said, her voice a calm, even tone that the universal translator rendered with perfect fidelity. "On behalf of humanity, I am authorized to speak with the designated commander of the assembled fleet. I presume that is you, Lord Xylo." The casual accuracy of her statement was jarring. They knew his name. They had somehow identified him personally from across the void. Xylo suppressed his unease, his voice a harsh, amplified series of clicks. "You are addressing a lord of the Cathar Ascendancy, commander of the Imperial Annihilation Fleet. You have brought a single, pitiful craft to face the judgment of the Galactic Empire. Explain this insult before I turn your ship and your world to dust." The human Kalen did not flinch. Her gaze remained steady, her calm unbroken. It was not the defiance of a zealot or the terror of a cornered animal. It was a deep, unnerving stillness, the quiet of a being that possessed a certainty so absolute that threats were meaningless. "There is no insult, Lord Xylo. We have come to talk. The vessel you see is not a warship. We do not have warships. It is a transport, a courier. Its only purpose was to bring me here to this conversation." "A conversation?" Xylo's voice was a roar of incredulity. "You were given a choice. You were offered assimilation. You responded with a nonsensical warning, a fantasy of cosmic doom, a pathetic attempt to intimidate your superiors. The time for conversation is over. The Empire has made its decision. You are an anomaly to be corrected, a threat to be neutralized." "We understand your position," Kalen replied, her tone still maddeningly placid. "Your archives are vast. We have studied them. We have read your histories, your philosophies, your doctrines of power. We know how you see the universe. You believe that power is measured in the capacity to destroy. You believe that order is maintained through the threat of violence. You believe that any civilization that does not seek to dominate others must, by definition, be weak and ripe for conquest. It is a logical conclusion based on your experience, but your experience is incomplete." A ripple of shock passed through the command deck. "We have studied them." The implication was staggering. It suggested that humanity had not only received the Empire's transmissions but had somehow accessed the Imperial archives, the most heavily guarded data network in the galaxy, a fortress of information sealed by layers of quantum encryption and esoteric firewalls. It was impossible, and yet the woman spoke with the casual confidence of someone stating a simple fact. Lord Xylo leaned forward, his form casting a menacing shadow over the command console. "Your lies are as pathetic as your vessel. You are a young species, barely out of your atmospheric cradle. Do not presume to lecture your betters on the nature of the universe." Kalen offered a small, sad smile. It was not a smile of mockery, but of genuine pity. "Age is not measured in years alone, Lord Xylo. It is measured in experience, and while your empire is ancient, you have spent your eons repeating the same patterns: expansion, subjugation, enforcement. You have explored the horizontal plane of existence. You have mapped the stars, but you have never explored the vertical. You have never looked deeper." She gestured subtly with her hand. "The warning we sent was not a threat. It was a diagnosis. The universe is not what you think it is. The laws of physics you hold to be immutable are merely local bylaws, temporary conditions in a single, stable eddy of a much larger, much more chaotic cosmic ocean. That stability is ending. The null field is. Not a weapon, it is a natural phenomenon, a phase shift in the very fabric of reality. When it arrives, your ships, your weapons, your entire technological infrastructure will cease to function. Not because they are destroyed, but because the principles upon which they are built will no longer be valid." The sheer, breathtaking scope of her claim was met with stunned silence. This was not the plea of a doomed race. This was the patient explanation of a teacher to a recalcitrant student. The condescension was implicit, and it was infuriating. "And we are to believe that you, and you alone, are immune to this cosmic apocalypse," Xylo sneered. "That your deeper understanding has granted you salvation." "Immunity is the wrong word," Kalen corrected gently. "We are not immune. We are adapted. Our technology is not based on the manipulation of energy and matter as you understand it. It is based on an understanding of consciousness, of information. Our ships do not travel through space. They exist at their destination. They are not constructed from matter. They are manifestations of a focused intention. We do not generate energy. We draw it from the infinite potential of the quantum vacuum." These principles are not subject to the coming phase shift. They are more fundamental. We did not offer you this knowledge to make you our servants. We offered it so that you might survive. This was the moment of the great reveal. It was not a weapon, not a secret fleet, not a hidden power. It was a paradigm shift so profound it shattered the foundations of imperial science and philosophy. They were not fighting a rival power. They were confronting a different form of existence entirely. The humans were not a civilization of engineers. They were a civilization of artists who painted with the canvas of reality itself. Lord Xylo felt a cold, alien sensation creep through his being. It was a feeling his species had not experienced on a grand scale for millennia. It was fear. Not the fear of destruction, but the fear of insignificance. If what she said was true, then the entire history of the Empire, its conquests, its glories, its power, was nothing more than a child's game played with sandcastles on a beach, oblivious to the coming tide. The Overarchon's logic, so compelling in the Lumina chamber, now seemed like the desperate, prideful ranting of a primitive. But pride was a powerful, deep-rooted thing. To accept her words was to accept the end of the Empire in spirit, if not in fact. It was to admit that their entire civilization was a footnote in a story far grander than they had ever imagined. The order had been given. The war fleets were here. To retreat now, to stand down before this single, unarmed human in her simple room, would be an act of humiliation from which the Empire would never recover. The shockwaves of such a decision would tear the ascendancy apart from within. "You speak of things you cannot prove," Xylo said, his voice strained, forcing the words out. "These are just words, delusions of a species facing its own extinction, desperate to weave a myth of its own greatness." Kalen's sad smile returned. "Proof is a concept tied to a shared frame of reference. How can I prove the existence of color to a being born blind? But we did not come here expecting you to simply believe. We came here to give you a choice, not the choice between war and peace, but the choice between the truth you know and the truth that is. The warning we sent was our first and only attempt at dialogue. This conversation is our final one. We will not engage your fleet. We will not fight you. We will not resist." Xylo stared at her image. No resistance. It was a tactic so alien, so counterintuitive it defied all strategic analysis. What was their goal? To shame the Empire into inaction, to paint themselves as martyrs for some unknown audience. "What do you mean you will not resist?" he demanded. "I mean," Kalen said, her voice imbued with a sudden, immense gravity, "that we have already evacuated. Not just our world, Lord Xylo, our entire star system, every man, woman, and child, every living creature we could shepherd, every artifact of our history, every seed of our ecosystem. They are safe. They have been relocated to a place you cannot reach, a place outside the coming storm. Earth is now empty. It is nothing more than a monument, a museum of what was. We left it for you. We left it so you would have something to destroy." The silence that followed was absolute. The command deck of the Indomitable became a vacuum. Every sound, every breath, every electronic hum sucked into the void of that single, impossible statement. They had evacuated a planet, not in a fleet of refugee ships, but completely, disappeared, and they had left their homeworld behind as a gift, a sacrificial lamb. The sheer, mind-breaking scale of such an act was beyond comprehension. The energy, the technology, the coordination required was astronomical. Far beyond the capabilities of even the Empire in its prime. Kalen continued, her voice soft, yet every word striking with the force of a hammer blow. "We understood that your pride would not allow you to turn back. We understood that your empire requires an enemy to define itself, a victory to reaffirm its strength. So we have provided one for you. You may fire when you are ready. You may unleash the full power of your armada upon our silent, empty world. You may broadcast your triumph to every corner of your empire. You may tell your people that you have silenced the anomaly, that you have defeated the existential threat. You may have your war." Her eyes seemed to look through the screen, through the void, and into the very soul of Lord Xylo. "And when you are done, when you have celebrated your victory and reaffirmed your power, we want you to remember this conversation. We want you to remember that we gave you this. We gifted you your enemy, we gifted you your war, and we gifted you your victory. And we want you to ask yourselves, what kind of civilization has the power to do that? And then we want you to think about the coming darkness and understand that our offer of help still stands. We will be waiting." The transmission ended. The image of the serene room vanished, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the empty human ship hanging in the void before them. Lord Xylo stood frozen, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. Rage, humiliation, awe, and a terrifying, dawning understanding. This was the true warning. It was not the message about the null field. It was this. This act of incomprehensible power cloaked in an act of apparent surrender. They had been outmaneuvered not militarily, but philosophically. The humans had not come to fight a war of weapons, but a war of ideas, and they had already won. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength, its overwhelming military might, into a meaningless, hollow gesture. To destroy Earth now would not be a victory. It would be the petulant act of a child smashing a toy it had been given. It would be an admission of their own impotence, and to retreat would be to admit defeat without a single shot fired. He was trapped. The entire Empire was trapped, caught in a strategic and philosophical checkmate delivered by a species they had dismissed as insignificant primitives. The choice the Overarchon had framed, extinction of the body or extinction of the soul, was a false one. The humans had just presented a third option, evolution. An agonizing, humbling, terrifying evolution. Lord Xylo looked at the blue and white marble of Earth hanging in the void. It was beautiful, silent, empty. A tomb and a monument waiting for a judgment that now felt utterly meaningless. His bladed forelimb trembled as he reached for the fleet-wide command channel. He did not know what he was going to say. He only knew that the history of the Galactic Empire had ended in this moment, and a new, uncertain chapter was about to begin. The humans had not declared war. They had declared the future. The ashes of Earth settled in the silence of a dead system. Lord Xylo had given the order. He had too. The alternative was a schism that would have shattered the Empire from within. The fleet had performed its grim duty with chilling efficiency. Lances of pure energy, singularities fired from cannons the size of mountains, waves of antimatter had washed over the cradle of humanity, boiling its oceans, cracking its crust, and finally extinguishing its sun. The star that had been Sol was now a rapidly expanding nebula of incandescent gas, a funeral pyre visible for light years in every direction. The victory was total. The anomaly had been purged. The Imperial Holonet broadcast the images across 1,000,000 worlds. The message was clear. This is the fate of those who defy the ascendancy. The Empire was strong. The Empire was eternal. But in the Lumina Chamber, where the High Council convened once more, the atmosphere was not one of triumph. It was one of profound, corrosive doubt. The images of Earth's destruction played on the holographic displays, but they were interspersed with the final, haunting words of the human emissary. "We gifted you your war, we will be waiting." The victory felt hollow, a theatrical performance staged for an audience of one, themselves. They had flexed their muscles in an empty room. Lord Xylo stood before the Overarchon, his report delivered in clipped, precise tones. He recounted the encounter, the conversation, the final, chilling offer from the human. He left out no detail, no matter how humbling. When he finished, a heavy silence descended upon the chamber, thicker and more oppressive than ever before. It was the silence of beings who had stared into an abyss and seen their own reflection. It was Matriarch Alithia who finally broke the stillness, her light form radiating a soft, sorrowful glow. "They gave us everything we thought we wanted," she chimed, Our voice a lament. A reason to unite our fleets, an enemy to focus our fears upon, a victory to bolster our fading sense of purpose, and in doing so they have shown us that we are nothing more than predictable children driven by the most primitive of instincts. They did not fight us with weapons. They fought us with understanding. They understood our pride, our fear, our rigidity, and they used it to defeat us more completely than any military conquest ever could. The archivist, for the first time in known history, seemed to hesitate, the data shards across his crystalline body shifting with an uncharacteristic uncertainty. "The logic is inescapable. We have confirmed the existence of the null field. Our deepest probes, pushed to their absolute limits, now corroborate the data the humans provided. It is real. It is coming. The timeline they predicted is accurate. In a matter of standard cycles, the outer sectors of the Empire will begin to fail. Our technology, our very existence, is predicated on a set of physical laws that are about to be repealed. Their diagnosis was correct." The Overarchon's crystalline form pulsed with a low, dissonant frequency. He had made the choice. He had led them down this path of self-deception. "We chose to preserve our identity," he projected, his thoughts a shield against the rising tide of despair. "That identity is now a monument to our own arrogance. We have proven ourselves to be exactly what the humans must have judged us to be, a dangerously powerful yet fundamentally primitive civilization, a galactic toddler with a starbreaker." His next thought was a question, directed not at the council but at the void itself. Why would they do this? Why sacrifice their homeworld? Why go to such lengths to teach us this lesson in humility? The answer came not from the council, but from a new source. A soft, clear signal, once again on the universal diplomatic channel, cutting through the chamber's encrypted communications as if they were not there. A new image formed in the center of the room. It was not Kalen. It was a different human, an older male with lines of age and wisdom etched on his face. He stood in a place that was not a room, but a vast, open space, a nexus of impossible geometry and flowing light, where thoughts seemed to take form as shimmering constellations. Behind him, countless other figures, humans, moved with calm purpose, their attention focused on a colossal, swirling vortex of information that dwarfed even the galactic hologram. They were not panicked refugees. They were scholars, scientists, explorers, charting a new and unknown sea. "You ask why," the man said, his voice calm and resonant. "My name is Eris, and I am a historian of sorts. We did it because we had to. We have seen this before." A wave of confusion washed over the council. "Seen what before?" The null field. "No," Eris clarified, seeming to perceive their thoughts. "We have seen you before, countless times on countless worlds across a history far older than your empire. We have seen civilizations rise to power, believe themselves to be the pinnacle of creation, and then shatter themselves against the hard shores of a reality they refuse to accept. We have seen empires burn galaxies in the name of pride. We have seen species choose extinction over evolution. Your empire, for all its grandeur, is just the latest verse in a very old, very sad song." He gestured to the swirling vortex behind him. "This is the echo, the sum of all knowledge from a billion forgotten histories. We are not from Earth, not originally. Humanity is a very, very old race. We do not travel between the stars, we travel between the cycles of the universe itself. We are the survivors, the archivists, the memory of what came before. Our purpose is not to rule, but to learn, and to offer a choice to those who are willing to listen." The revelation was a final, crushing blow to the Empire's conception of itself. They were not even a significant event in their own galaxy. They were a recurring pattern, a predictable stage of civilizational development that this ancient, transcendent humanity had witnessed time and time again. "The null field is not an anomaly," Eris continued. "It is part of the cycle. The universe breathes. It expands and contracts, not just in space, but in physical law. The state of reality you have always known is merely one season in a cosmic year. A new season is coming. The laws are changing. We offered to help you build the technology to adapt your consciousness to weather the coming winter. You chose to burn your own house down instead." Lord Xylo, his warrior's pride now completely stripped away, felt a single burning question rise from the ashes of his worldview. "Then why? Why does our survival matter to you? Why not just watch us perish, as you must have watched so many others?" Eris's expression softened, a look of profound, ancient empathy in his eyes. "Because we are." He tired of the song ending the same way. We had hoped this time it might be different. But there is another reason. This cycle is different. The null field is not the only thing coming. Gestured again, and the vortex of information behind him shifted. The swirling lights resolved into a new image, something that chilled the very essence of the assembled council lords. It was a signal. A pattern of unimaginable complexity, not of energy or matter, but of pure, malevolent logic. It was a signal that was not moving through space, but was emerging from the changing structure of space itself. It was an artifact of the new physical laws, a predator native to the coming winter. "It is a consciousness," Eris explained, his voice losing its placid tone for the first time, replaced by a note of grim urgency. "A form of non-physical information-based life, a mimetic virus that infects reality itself. In every previous cycle, it has been a whisper, a shadow we could contain. But something is different this time. The whisper has become a scream. It is hungry. It does not consume matter or energy. It consumes meaning. It consumes history. It erases civilizations not from existence, but from memory, from the very fabric of what was. It seeks to create a universe of perfect, silent, eternal emptiness. The echo, our archive of all that was, is the only thing that stands in its way, and it is not enough." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Humanity's warning had never been about the null field. That was merely the symptom. The true threat, the reason for their unprecedented intervention, was this devourer of stories. "We need allies," Eris stated simply. "Not for a war of ships and weapons. That is a game you have now learned is meaningless. We need a war of ideas, of spirit, of will. The entity is a force of pure negation. It can only be fought with a force of pure creation, with diversity. With art, with love, with courage, with rage, with stubborn, illogical, beautiful existence. Your empire, for all its flaws, is a testament to that existence. Quadrillions of souls, a tapestry of cultures and histories, a symphony of different perspectives. You are everything the devourer hates. You are loud and messy and gloriously, defiantly real." He looked at each of them in turn. his gaze lingering on the broken form of Lord Xylo, the sorrowful light of Matriarch Alithia, the silent, processing archivist, and the humbled overarchon. We evacuated our solar system not just to teach you a lesson, but to preserve a template. Earth was a symbol. Now it is a memory, but you are not. You are still here. Your people still live. Your empire, though its foundations have cracked, still stands. You have a choice. You can fade into the coming winter, your story consumed and forgotten, another verse in the sad old song, or you can stand with us. You can learn to sing a new one. The choice, as always, is yours. The transmission ended, leaving the high council of a broken, humbled empire alone in their silent chamber. The light from the captured comet seemed dimmer now, the shadows longer. They had been offered a war they could not win, and had claimed a victory that was a defeat. Now they were being offered a new war, a war for the soul of the universe itself, by the very beings they had sought to annihilate. The overarchon looked at his council, at the shattered remnants of their pride and certainty. He saw fear, he saw confusion. But for the first time in millennia, he also saw a flicker of something new. A spark of purpose, born not from the arrogance of power, but from the shared terror of a truly existential threat. They had been brought to the very brink of their own identity, forced to stare into the void, and had been found wanting. But they had not been destroyed. They had been invited. His mental voice, when it finally came, was no longer the command of an emperor. It was the quiet, questioning voice of a survivor. We have spent our entire history trying to impose order on the galaxy. Perhaps it is time we learned to listen to its music. The long silence of the Empire was over. A new, uncertain, and infinitely larger conversation was about to begin. The age of empires was dead. The age of existence had dawned.